what we learn as our physical world, what we experience in our physical world, it causes us to establish interest. We have interest in the things that we learn about in our environment. So from a baby, we develop interest in the things that are in our environment. We develop impulses for the things that are in our environment. And we desire to spend our time, and we show that by the impulses and the things and the interest that we show every day in our environment. And what we show interest in is going to be based on what we have been taught to, we've learned exists in our environment. So the baby learns that something exists in their environment, and it becomes something that captures their imagination and their attention. The same happens throughout a person's life. That's the carnal being captured, the attention, the knowledge, the interest being captured by what's around them. Something that gets their attention physically. And so what Paul is saying is that the people who trust in the Lord, he can't talk to them spiritually yet because they are showing that they have more interest in the physical world around them that they have been living in all of their lives. So he's referring to that as carnal. So he's saying, I can't talk to you. So it's like talking to a baby, he says. It's like me trying to have a conversation with a baby, and I know the baby can't understand the conversation because of the number of experiences that the baby has had so far. He can't have a conversation with these brethren, these people. They're not children, but they are spiritual babies because they show more interest in the first life, the things that the first life has made available to them, than they do the new life that is Christ. So he's calling that carnal. What you learned to the things you learned about when you were first brought into this world, the things you learned about every day up until that point in time, that mostly what you have shown that you have an interest in, that you value, that you spend your time doing, are things related to the carnal, what was introduced in your environment, the lifestyle or the manner of living that you were brought up with. And so what he's telling them is that he's trying to introduce something new to them, but because of the interest in these things that they've been interested in all their lives, he's finding it difficult to talk to them about spiritual things. And in order to learn, you have to talk. In order to grow spiritually, you have to communicate. You have to talk. But this is what Paul is talking about here. I can't talk to you as spiritual because your life, your mind, your interest is consumed by the carnal things that you've learned about in your environment, the carnal things that's in your life, the worldly things that dominate your life, the human nature, what people typically do, the way people typically live, what people typically value, how people typically do things. He's saying that those things are so dominant, so prevalent in their lives, in these people who love God's lives, that it's difficult for him to talk to them about spiritually what thus said the Lord. So he's trying to get them to go from, they are, if you look at it from the carnal perspective, from the worldly perspective, from the human nature perspective, from the traditions or the customs of the of the species, if you look at it from that perspective, they are very knowledgeable people, and they apply that knowledge in their lives. But if that knowledge is hampering them, if that knowledge is hindering them, if that knowledge is not helping them be the best person that they could be, if they're paying a very severe price for living by that common knowledge, that human nature, that tradition or that custom, if they're suffering as a result of being involved with that custom or living according to that tradition, if they're suffering and they're not having a good, fulfilling life, God is saying, in order for you to be better, I need to be able to talk to you spiritually. I need to be able to have you to receive and to accept, choose the spiritual versus the carnal. So what's happening in the new life with Christ is that you have people who have been living every day, day to day, being built up with knowledge and experiences about this world and the way that people do things in this world and what's possible and what's not possible in this world, and and people putting limits on what you can and cannot do in this world, and based on man's human nature, what man has created to this point in man's existence. And so what the challenge that the Lord is putting forward in front of people, he's saying, if you follow my teaching, my way, I will lead you to a new way of life. And that new way of life is going to be a spiritually enriched life. It's going to be a spiritual life that allows you to thrive in your physical surroundings. But you are thriving with the spiritual knowledge of God. That's what Jesus Christ brought to the table. He began to open the people's eyes to see that if they learn to trust God in the midst of the life that they are in, if they change their priorities, that God will cause them to thrive and cause them not to be held back because of some of the the challenges that they found in their life in the past. So this is important because what it tells you, as the scripture goes on, it says, I have fed you with milk in verse 2 and not with meat. In other words, I've given you things that you could understand, things that you could relate to, not deeper things, not things that are more advanced, because you are not ready for it yet. That's what he's saying. For hitherto you were not able to bear it, neither yet now are ye able. In other words, he's talking about people who love God. It's just that their lives are so consumed with human nature. Their lives are consumed with the carnality of what has been introduced to them throughout their lives through carnal people. That's all they've ever known. So therefore, what people have to begin to do is to not consider that there is another way and not believe that they have to continue to accept all that the carnal world has introduced for them. Because what has happened in the carnal world that's been introduced to us from baby when we were born into this world, there are some things that were introduced to us that are very good, that we should keep and maintain. But then there are other things that we have been introduced to and that have been a part of the nature of our world, the traditions of our world, that are not good for us as individuals. And they are the cause for us not living the full life that God desires for us to live. And so what has to happen, the Bible said, you were not able to bear it. So now Paul is talking about, I want you to recognize that you now have to grow spiritually. So he goes on in the third verse and says, for ye are yet carnal, For whereas there is among you envying and strife and divisions, are ye not carnal and walk as men? So what is he talking about? He is basically saying the reason why you're not able to, he's not able to talk to you about the new way of Christ, the life in Christ, is because of the things that you are so ingrained in, the carnal way that you've been ingrained in by man. Paul said he could see that they weren't ready for this kind of new talk. And he could see that they weren't ready for this kind of new speech. He could see that they weren't ready for this kind of lifestyle, this new lifestyle, based on their displayed manner of behaving and conducting themselves. The way that they were currently behaving and conducting themselves. He could see that they were not ready for this new way through the teachings of Christ. So what did he see? See, these people were born again. They were trusting God. Although they were born again, their style of living up to that day in their lifetime suggested they were more interested in being carnal than they were interested in being spiritual. What did he see? He saw that they were more interested in envy. Envy is being jealous. They were more interested in showing jealousy. They were more interested in being coveting, desiring what others had. They were more interested in having bitter disagreements. That's what strife is. They were more interested in being angry. They were more interested in being in conflict. So if I pause right there, those kinds of things, are you saying, Pastor, whenever there is conflict, whenever there is anger, whenever there is bitter disagreement, we disagree. It's one thing to disagree, but it's another thing to have bitter disagreements. It's talking about envying and being desirous of stuff that others have. These things, what he's saying is, these things is what God's people are showing their interest in so much that it's difficult to give them the things that allow them to become spiritually grown. So they remain spiritual babies because they are more interested in a lifestyle that involves them showing jealousy about stuff around them, different situations that occur around them, about coveting, desiring what other people might have, around having bitter disagreement with people, arguing, being in conflict. And then there's this last one, divisions. They're more interested in staying separated instead of working together. They're more interested in being factions instead of who disagree with one another than they are being people who agree with one another, find what they have in common and agree with one another and working together. They're more interested in focusing on that which keeps people separate instead of focusing on that which brings people together. So no matter what they call themselves, born again, what Paul is saying is they are spiritual babies because they desire to have this carnal way of life. These attributes happen in their lives. He says when people, you say, well, how do you know people are behaving this way? If this is the way they're acting, if people are showing that they are envious of other people, if people are showing that they are jealous of other people, they're showing that they have bitter disagreement with people all the time, they're showing that they're angry all the time, if they're showing that they have conflict all the time, if they show that they they prefer to be separate than to work together. What the Bible is saying, that carnal behavior that you learned from your first life, that's not how life is in heaven. So therefore, in order to get to heaven, we have to learn how to take on the attributes that are in heaven, which means we have to learn how to take those things that are not heavenly attributes and take them out of our lives, which means we reduce the importance of carnal behavior in our lives and increase the importance of spiritual behavior in our lives. God saying, I'm still going to bless you to be prosperous, but I can't bless you to be prosperous and you be angry all the time. I can't bless you to be prosperous and you be envious and jealous all the time. I can't bless you to be a representative of me when you encourage people to be separated, to separate themselves in factions. I'm better than you. We're better than you. When you look down on people, if you live that way, God is saying, I can't bless you to be my representative. I can't feed you with spiritual knowledge and wisdom and favor because you are not going to represent me. You're going to represent the carnality of what you learned from your first life. The Lord is asking us to learn to lay those things aside. This is what Paul is talking about, is the new life. Laying aside those things that are not godly, that are not advantageous, that are not heaven-like, and embracing those things that are. Go with me to Matthew 15. We'll delve more into this. Say Matthew 15. Let me have a reader at verse 13.
But he answered and said, every point which my heavenly Father hath not planted shall be rooted up. Let them be alone. They be blind leaders of the blind, and if the blind lead the blind, both shall fall into the ditch.
What the Bible is declaring unto us here is a message that Jesus is sharing with his disciples and the people who are present. He's trying to give them some perspective about the way God sees people. What's in a person's heart. That's what he's talking about. What he's basically saying is, it's the things that are in our heart, that's what routinely comes out of our mouth. The things that are in our heart is what routinely comes out, and once it comes out in our mouth or it comes out in our behavior, and it causes a distinctive custom or behavior to emerge socially. So think about it for a moment. What in our heart, it comes up and out, normally out of our mouth, and it causes a certain kind of custom or behavior to emerge socially, reflecting either spiritual or carnal impulses, values, or things that honor God, or it represents carnal impulses, values, or things that dishonor God. But either way, what we speak about, what we represent, that we prefer a carnal way of life, which is a fleshly way of life, which is a physical way of life, which is based on the life of what we've learned to value throughout our lives, the first life, or the spiritual way of life, which is based on the life that we are striving to be a part of, which is based on our respect for God's commandments and God's words. But what comes out of our mouth is the key. It's a reflection of what's in our heart. It's a reflection of what's important to us, what we spend our time doing. It's a reflection of what's important to us. It's a reflection of whether it is that which honors God or not. That's what Jesus is talking about here. It represents the customs. So does it representing God, or is it representing something else? Continue reading, please.
Then answered Peter and said unto him, declare unto us this parable.
So Peter said, help us understand this, Jesus. Help us understand what you mean by the blind leading the blind, and they both shall fall into a ditch. Help us understand this. Continue.
And Jesus said, are ye also yet without understanding? Do not ye yet understand that whosoever entereth in at the mouth goeth into the belly and is cast out into the dark?
So he's saying, you don't understand what I'm saying? Let me give you some perspective. He said, do you not know that everything that goes into your mouth, that enters into your mouth, that you dispose of in the drop and going to the bathroom in one way or another, whether it's a liquid or a solid, it's disposed of, it comes out. That's what Jesus is saying. Everything that goes in, it comes out. There's a way for it to come out. Continue.
But those things which proceed out of the mouth come forth from the heart, and they defile the man.
Now, so sometimes people say, oh, I can't eat this, I can't eat that. But what Jesus is trying to help everybody understand is that what you eat or what goes in will what? It will come out. That's not what defiles or make you bad. It's what's in you that comes out. That's what defiles or makes a person bad. That's what tells you nature a person lives by. That's what tells you what customs a person lives by. That's what tells you what values a person has. That's what tells you what the nature of a person, what comes up and out of them. That's what Jesus is talking about. He said that is what makes you defiled as a person. That's what makes you bad as a person. That's what makes you bad. Unusable. Something that's defiled, not usable. What comes up and out of you. Continue reading.
For out of the heart proceed evil thoughts, murderers, adulterers, fornication, thieves, false witness, and blasphemy. These are the things which defile a man, but to eat with unwashed hands defiles not a man.
So he's trying to help them understand, look at the things that actually make you not usable to God. It's the stuff that comes up and out of you, not the stuff that you eat and goes out. But what comes out of the mouth, it gets its start in the heart. And it's from the heart that we bring up and out evil arguments. These are some of the things that he calls out here. He says evil thoughts. The thing about it is evil arguments, evil intentions, an intention to murder. So evil speaking, arguing, murdering, adultery, fornication, stealing, lying, cursing. These are the things he's saying. All of these things is what defiles or makes a person useless to themselves and to God. Where do people get these things? They get it from their carnal experience that first life. They get before they learn to become born again. They learn that somebody in their vineyard has been doing it. So their interest, the things that they've shown interest in, is those things. And when they've shown an interest in those things, what the Bible is saying, it eventually starts coming up and out of them. And it comes up and out of them and gives them what the world would call a bad reputation. So that's what he's talking about. And he's saying that because they're so full with these things that they learned in the carnal world from people. Remember, carnal is when the baby got here, the baby didn't know anything about the way the world operated. The baby didn't know what was good and what was bad. So what the baby inherits is what that environment produces. And the baby begins to mimic that environment. What Paul is talking about, what Jesus found, what God saw, is that God's people who love him were mimicking the wrong behaviors and conduct that was causing them to fall away from God, to be defiled. They were mimicking the wrong behavior. They learned and they didn't realize that they needed to let that wrong behavior what? Go. In order that they might get back to God, they need to learn to let that defiling behavior go. Lay it aside. Stop doing it.
Oh, praise be to God, from whom all blessings flow. It is our prayer at Clay Family Ministries that your life has been increased with the increase of God through this study. We appreciate and are thankful for your fellowship during this life skills study segment.